Boom. Just before we get into today's episode with Tony Bacigalupo, the amazing Tony Bacigalupo, we will bring to your attention the Unreasonable Connection, which is every month, and it is a group of co-working space owners, co-working community builders, people who run co-working spaces, and we all say hello in a big group, and then we go into groups of 3 or 4 online, and sometimes we have a question we talk about, thought-provoking question, and sometimes we just talk about what is ever top of mind that day, and then we come back and we share in the group. It's highly informal. There's no sponsors, there's no pitches, there's no adverts, there's no secret squirrels. It's just a very informal but intentional get together, and there's a link in the show notes. There's always a link in the show notes to this event and all the other things we rant about in this podcast. So let's get into the show with Tony. Hello folks, and welcome to today's Co-working Values podcast. In the studio is the legend in his own lunchtime, Tony. What are you known for, and what do you like to be known for?
What am I known for? Well, I won a karaoke competition back in 2010. That was pretty cool. But no, I led the charge to open what would become Manhattan's first co-working space back in 2008. It was called New Work City. There were people doing, basically co-working type stuff, but in the era of what we call and know of as co-working today, I got New Work City open, and it was a very special moment. And it was a time when the global co-working movement was becoming a big deal. So I ended up connecting with all sorts of interesting folks around the world who were building similar communities and got to be a part of that movement. And that's how you and I became acquainted, Bernie. And how would I like to be remembered is, gosh, I mean, I've been on this before, and I've been asked this before, and I feel like it is too darn good of a question. I'd like to be remembered as someone who did a lot of good stuff and helped a lot of people find their people, helped a lot of people feel hope and optimism and empowerment, and that I was a darn good husband and hopefully dad and hopefully granddad. I don't know. Did a lot of good stuff and had fun doing it.
It's like having your very own Mr. Rogers in the studio.
Hang on, let me change my cardigan.
Yeah. Well, kids, what is this new in town thing? I know I should ask that in a really nice way in a warm up, but let's just get right into, because you recently were new in town and you played it out like I wish I'd done when I moved to Vigo, and I'm so in awe / slightly jealous. But it's the next iteration, isn't it?
My wife and I moved from New York City 2 years ago to Norwalk, Connecticut, which is a small city, population 95,000, about an hour outside of New York, along the coast on the way to Boston. And we previously had no connection to Connecticut whatsoever. I mean, I grew up, I was born in New York City. I was raised in Long Island, which is across the water from Connecticut. But I never really had an opinion about Connecticut. Connecticut was just always kind of there. We would make fun of New Jersey. We would talk about Staten Island. We'd have opinions about every direction except Connecticut. Connecticut was just kind of a black hole of, it's just kind of there. But when we were moving out of New York, it turned out that Norwalk checked all the boxes for what we were looking for. We were looking for something that was not too big, not too small, vibrant, diverse, interesting, commutable to the city. And it happened to have everything we wanted, including a cafe where the people who run it were basically the unofficial social connectors of town. And so I was quickly able to get myself settled. But the whole idea, really was that having been a community builder for, basically my whole adult life, I knew that eventually I would want to settle in on what I call my 40-year community project, which is essentially wherever I put down roots and make my home, because that's, the ultimate in my mind is that community project. And so we're pretty sure that's going to end up being Norwalk. We've been here the last couple of years. And so as a community nerd and as a joiner and as a social guy, I ended up in a place where I now live in a city, in a state where I don't know much of anything or much of anyone. And so I started from scratch, and I applied everything I had learned along the way about how to find and build community and documented it. And what I realized was that along the way, I was finding stuff that a lot of other people didn't know about. So I would overhear in the local cafe, oh, there's nothing to do in Norwalk, and I had to like resist jumping out of my table and be like, no, there's so much going on here. You just don't know about it. And once you start to, look at it critically, you realize that there's in many places, and certainly in Norwalk, there's a lot of good stuff, a lot of communities, a lot of interesting projects going on that most people just don't know about. And I knew about it because I put a lot of effort into it, but I wanted to make that more accessible to other people. And that's what kind of started to click for me in terms of my recent community building efforts, is just my desire to share with others what I am finding and to ultimately make it easier for them to find it too.
That's so true about you don't know what's going on in your own town. Because when I lived in London for 15 years when I got married, and Lorena's from Argentina. Super cool wife, as she's known, is from Argentina. So she moved from she was from Argentina, was living in Poland, and then moved to London. And for the first 5 years of our marriage, everyone, when your mate moves, if I moved to New York, everyone would want to come to New York and visit me. And I saw more of London in 3 years of my first 3 years of marriage than I'd seen in the last 15 living there, because you just kind of are immune to it. I've only been to the Tower of London once, and it's nuts. And what's going on in town, I have the same experience here in Vigo. I know things that are happening because I just look for them, whereas people who have lived here all their lives don't realise that Iggy Pop is playing in the marina at 8 o'clock, yeah, which actually happened. Um, so, what? I can ask this: what is the mistake that? So, when people are trying to build a community, like they
Yeah.
land in town like you are, either they decide they want to build a community and they're already in town, or they land in town like you are. What is the mistake
Mhm.
they? Um, where do they like mess up creating belonging? Like
Yeah.
you and I know that.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to start humble and paying respect to the existing system and infrastructure. It's hard to come into a new environment and instantly become a leader. You want to understand the landscape and you want to build your social capital. And so in my mind, you know, nobody in Norwalk knows like, oh, here comes Tony. He's got 18 years of global co-working, whatever. Like nobody knows that. Nobody cares. I'm just a new guy who showed up at the cafe. But the more time that I spend there, I knew the moment I stepped into Eco Evolution Cafe, the best community gathering spot in all of Norwalk. I knew the moment I walked in there that was like, oh, this is it. This is the spot. If we move to Norwalk, this is going to be my headquarters. I'm going to do events here. I knew the moment we walked in. But Brad, the owner of the space, didn't know that yet because he's friendly to everybody who walks in the door. A few months after we moved, he said, so when are you going to do an event here? And I said, I've been waiting a few months for this moment to happen. And I knew it would happen eventually, but it was only because I showed up and I paid attention. So I looked for places to go. I looked for communities to join. I looked for ways to become visible and consistent, really committing to certain spots and certain groups. And then looking for opportunities to be useful and helpful. And so the more that I did that, the more that opportunities started coming my way. And then leadership started to find me.
I remember
And I would
watching all
say
this
just Bernie,
unfold.
I'm sorry to cut you off. In contrast, if I try to come in and do something from scratch, it's very, very hard for me to get people to show up. So it's better if you build the cred and then let the mandate kind of find you.
I agree. I remember watching this all unfold on LinkedIn and Instagram over the years. Yeah, because I I wouldn't have done it anyway, but I when we moved to Vigo, I almost didn't go to a co-working space because I didn't want it to actually say like, oh, you haven't heard my podcast, you know. It's like I just really, and I'm glad it took me 3 years. I just like kept I don't know, low profile, and whenever, I mean, no one was going to notice me anyway. Let's be realistic, but I just felt it was really important to understand how this town worked before I did anything. And it's only just now that I'm getting involved in something, and that's with people that I've known 3 years. And um, I'm glad I waited because now I understand all these little how everything is intertwined, and there's still loads to know anyway. So, what is I've got to ask this. I can't believe I didn't open with this. Is there a co-working space there, or is it the cafe?
Yeah, in Norwalk proper, there are some so-called co-working spaces, which are workspaces that are part of larger residential development, kind of apartment building type things. There is a writers community space in kind of in the adjacent town, and there is one co-working space also kind of on the other side, you know technically another town, called Haven, that is a proper community co-working space. But in the middle of town here, in a 100,000 person city, there isn't really a proper co-working space, and I don't know that there needs to be one either, which is interesting.
I
um,
can't say that. Quick, edit that out, Emily.
I'm not saying that there couldn't be one. I don't know that the demand has been proven yet. If I were 24-year-old me and I was super hot on just throwing myself at building a space from scratch, then I could probably brute force it. But I don't get the sense right now. And we could talk about why. I think part of it is the Zoom situation. So many more people are working remote now, but so many more people are just so tied to their desks because of the advent of video conferencing as a new standard. So it's a different landscape, but the short answer is not really.
So when you moved there, like, what do you think the city should? Oh, wait, when you moved there, did you get welcome to the city, or did you just get the keys to your house and move in? Was
Well,
it like a landing process?
yeah, I mean, yes and no, in the sense that there was plenty out there for us to find. We found the visitnorwalk.com site, which had access to a lot of event programming, and I subscribed to a ton of different Instagram accounts and things like that. And of course, I knew that there was the local cafe where I would find out what was going on. They have a great newsletter with listings of upcoming events, and just knowing where a couple of my feet in the door were going to be was a really good start. But it could be a lot better, and I recognize that my own experience is colored by the fact that I put a very unusual amount of effort into mapping these kinds of things out. Most people don't. And so, if I were somebody else moving to Norwalk today, I don't know that I would find a lot of this stuff quite so easily. And that's a big part of what I'm trying to change. And so, yeah.
There's that how I'm going to look at this through the lens of a co-working space. So if I was a co-working space, I would look for ways to try not to say stand. Try not to, all those marketing words that come in when you're trying to say something. Like, imagine you and I move to town. We probably ignore the something that looked too well done or too
Mhm.
official, too a local website that was full of affiliate links or something like that was trying to be pass itself off as a local guide, and then you
Yep.
get down to um, where are the people really doing the stuff, and like what prompted this question is you said the cafe had a local newsletter
Hmm.
and it told you where events are, and that's like a really really easy thing to do. I mean, everyone knows I love newsletters, but what was
It's
most
not
useful?
the
Was it
easiest thing,
newsletters?
but it's gotten a little bit easier. And I actually stumbled upon somebody who's starting a newsletter for Jackson Heights, neighborhood in Queens, and he's part of a network of people who are building local newsletters. And I've discovered since then that it is becoming a bit of a movement to fill the gap of the decline of local newspapers. That there is a need and a hunger and an opportunity for local newsletters, just people who are sharing on a regular basis curated information about what's going on in town. And I think that's one great way to just perform a civic service for your city is if you feel inclined to write a newsletter, it could actually be a pretty good little business model too, and it could be of great service to your city if a really great one doesn't exist already.
Yeah, because that's like that's like the you know being a local food blogger is like a bit has been done too many times now. But like being a local newsletter curator, particularly on things like Substack or Beehive or that type of thing, um, is a great way to create that community connection type thing, because you want to know where it's going on, not like where you're being fed, like Yelp. Or is Yelp even still around? Like that, and I imagine it's the same in the States. But when you go to a local newspaper in the UK, there are more adverts than news on it, and they're really bad adverts. If they were like useful adverts, that would be okay, but they're for like things you never would ever want to get. And if you were going to get it, you certainly wouldn't get it from an ad on the local newspaper website.
Yeah, and maybe there's a sustainability aspect to that, but you know, newspapers have plenty of ads, and they still provided a valuable service to the community. So I think there's a good way to do it. I think that there are exploitative, less valuable ways to do it, but the point is giving people access to information about why they should leave the house this weekend instead of just staying at home to ignore their TV while scrolling on their phone. Like, we got to give people. That's one of the theories I have, is just that we can't beat the addictions of the algorithms and the internet, but if you get invited to go do something in real life, then that's a hard thing to turn down. It's a hard thing to say no to. It gives you a reason to get out, and even just being out around other people on occasion. We don't have to aim for getting rid of our phones altogether. It's not going to happen, but we can at least add some good to our lives, and just a little bit of participation, a little bit of volunteering, a little bit of meaningful connection with your neighbors can go a long way.
So if I'm listening to this, I'm all up for meaningful connection. But like, what I feel this more in London. It's like, oh my god, where do I begin? And in my ideal world, every neighborhood would have a co-working space, which is the place you go to find out how to connect with everything. But there's places that do that. There's places that want to do that and they haven't quite worked it out. And there's places that just don't even know that's that what they could be doing.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like, how can we? We're linked to the belongfulness. Did I say it right?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, such a minefield. Bacigalupo, belongfulness. With
I,
my
I don't make it easy on you, man. You got to earn
yeah,
it.
damn right, brother. What can we do? Because I'm always people are always going. I think what happens is people go, oh, I'd really like to do that, and it's just so much to think about. They don't do it.
Yeah,
Like there's too
yeah,
much friction, even though the intention is there.
yeah. I mean, I would say that it is ultimately about finding that right balance of what you are up for and the easiest way to kind of continue or progress or take the next step. So I think for me personally, that starts with, let's say that I just, drop you in a city, you don't know anybody, you don't know anything, and you're just starting from zero. Well, in my mind, the first thing you could do is make use of the information that you can gather right now without anything but your own wits and a computer. And so you can, go on Google and literally just scroll around. I've found incredible stuff literally just dragging the map around and seeing what pops up. And then, of course, searching cafes, bars, libraries, bookstores, community spaces, co-working spaces. If you search around, you'll start finding interesting candidates. You find the place that has charming secondhand furniture and colorful paint on the wall, and you start making a list of places to start hanging out. And then the next step is not a big step either, which is you start going to places and picking up on the vibe. You're putting up your radar and you're listening for what is the signal that this place is interesting or special. And that might mean a particularly witty repartee with a barista, or it might be that you're picking up on there being interesting people in the place or whatever it is. And so you're just exploring. You don't have to do anything. You could stay anonymous, but you can start getting information about the world around you. And then over time, you can start to commit. You can start to spend more time in a place where you feel like this is a good direction to go. You can start to participate in stuff, start going to the same event every week. There's probably a volunteer trash pickup that happens on a weekly or monthly basis not far from you. You start showing up to that. You don't need to introduce yourself. You don't need to make a big deal out of it. But if you start showing up, stuff starts finding you. And
Yeah.
that's where like things naturally start to happen. I'll give you an example. Here in Norwalk, there's one group that is super civically active called Sustainable Streets Norwalk. They advocate for pedestrian friendly, bike friendly, transit friendly policies. And they are like the policy nerds of Norwalk outside of the people who actually work in the government. And so I was introduced to them by my local cafe owner. And I just started out by going to their meetings and subscribing to their discussions and whatever. And I, for 2 years, was basically just a subscriber and a guy who was showing up to stuff. And eventually they said to me, because they noticed that I kept showing up, they said, "Hey, we want to do these weekly bike parties, these casual social bike rides on Friday nights throughout the summer. But the person who's been running it is going to be leaving soon. They might have to move, whatever it is. Would you be interested in, helping lead that program?" And I said, "Hell yeah, absolutely. Sounds great. Have I ever done a social group bike ride before in my life? No, but I'll figure it out." So I told them, "Hey, look, I've never done it before. Can you guys help me with the first couple of them?" And they said, "Sure, no problem." And I've been doing it for the last couple months and it's been incredible. And now I'm a leader of a program. And I got drafted into that just because I was a guy who showed up.
From Manhattan's first co-working space and co-working innovator to local neighborhood bike ride leader.
But Bernie, I'll give you one more too. This is exactly how I ended up running a co-working space too. I was at a meetup, a tech meetup, where other people were working this deal to make use of a restaurant that was closed in the daytime to open it during the daytime for co-working. But they needed people to commit to actually lead the project. And I just kept showing up to those meetings until people started asking me what to do. Like that was how I became a founder of a co-working space, because I showed up to what somebody else was doing and showed up enough times that I ended up in a position of leadership.
That's what is I must have asked this before, but what happened, Tony, that you want to organize people and connect people?
Well, I like to say that popular kids the popular kids growing up are never the community leaders because the existing community infrastructure worked for them. If you ended up, finding your people just through, sports or corporate or whatever kind of the existing like traditional infrastructure is, you're not looking to create community because your existing community stuff is already there for you. The reason that we co-working people or community people feel so happy when we're at conferences together and things like that is because we so rarely are in a room of other people who feel the hunger to create the kind of belonging that they couldn't find themselves growing up. And so, ultimately, I'm just trying to create the lunch table that I could never sit at myself.
I know exactly what you mean. That was a great answer. And when you said, like, when you turn up to a conference full of, so it's like in London, we used to run, there's me and a few others, and we used to run the London meetup organizers group. And it was such a safe space, Tony. It wasn't just because we could moan about the email system or why people didn't show up and everything like that. It's like, it was the lunch table we never had. I love that analogy. So just before we hit it and quit, what is something you'd like us to go and do this week?
Yeah. So something you can do this week, I would say, is look for stuff that you didn't know existed before. Use Google Maps, use Instagram, follow an account, and then see what accounts get suggested. Other things that are going on in your town, local events, programs, things like that. And I would say look for, if you don't have it already, look for a new place to make a home base to hang out in where good things are going to happen. And if you don't know where that is in your town already, then keep looking. And if it truly doesn't exist, then you might have to create it. But I think there's a good chance there's somebody else out there who's doing something interesting you could join in on. And if you do have something that you feel like you do get that vibe, commit to it. Go out of your way to show up regularly and be a part of something. The associational life, the commitment is a big part of what we're missing. So commit, keep showing up, keep adding value, volunteer, support other people, support other organizers and leaders, and good things will find you. And if you're, kind of beyond all of that, and you're in more of a position of leadership or hunger to do stuff, compile a directory of stuff going on in your city and find the city officials who are interested in supporting more community gathering and activity, and build a relationship with them. Find out what they need help with. And maybe you can end up with a printed directory like I did with my city, where we actually printed a club directory for Norwalk, which we can now distribute in libraries and train stations and things, so we can raise awareness. So there's all kinds of stuff we can do.
There's a few things there. I meet so many people on the Ryanair flight from London to Vigo and end up chatting either in the queue at the passport and stuff. And particularly when people are coming into Vigo, there's so how long are you in town for? And this kind of thing. And I've got to go back to it now because you reminded me, but I started to make a Google Doc, just a simply publicly available Google Doc where go to this restaurant here and speak to Jamie, go to this restaurant here and speak to Carlos, and then Christina was in here. And because I don't want to start a local website or a food blog or anything like that, but like it's a great joy in showing people where to go, and where they particularly, I love coffee. So where to get a good coffee in Vigo,
Yeah, picture a dear old friend is moving to your town and they want your full download on how to find the best of everything and how to get connected. Just dump that into a Google Doc, man, and then that's a really good start.
And putting stuff like this on your co-working space website is a no-brainer. Like something I've always recommended to people is like the where if you live in Wigan, top 10 coffee bars in Wigan or something, because people will find it and they will find you, and they probably won't immediately sign up to your co-working space. If you do it as a marketing ploy, people will smell it. But if you do it as a helpful community contribution thing, the people whose name is on that website and linked to will appreciate it, and the person that found it will remember where they found it. One last thing, Tony, before we go, is we were talking before we came on that there's a lot going on in the world, and how focusing locally and connecting with people around us is the bit we can actually do. Because I actually took Instagram off my phone because I was endlessly scrolling about things, I'm not going to say them here, but like world events. And I'm really good at social media.
Yeah.
And I would open Instagram first thing in the morning and have juice myself with anxiety about things out of my control. But what if I did that locally?
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, certainly the focus for a lot of us here in the States last year was around national politics, a big election, all of that. And turned out that, even putting in a lot of effort into trying to wield some sort of influence over the outcome of that didn't really get us anywhere. There's a lot of people who put in a lot of effort, sending postcards and, text banking and phone banking and all this stuff. It's different when you're trying to make an influence on people that you don't actually have a relationship to, that people who aren't your neighbors. It's much harder to make a difference and to make an impact when, and I say this also, notwithstanding the election, building the Belongfulness Project. If I'm trying to do that to a wide audience and just talk about theories, talk about stories, interview people, it's really hard to get people to notice or care when you're just head to head against every other content creator on the internet. They're always going to be better. They're always going to have more resources. But when I focus on local, I have a locus of control. I can have a lot more influence on what's going on close by to me. And there are people who are going to be very grateful. There are, city officials, there are community organizers who will be very, very grateful if you show up and help them out and make their jobs easier. And then when I go back to the internet and I tell the internet what I'm doing here in Norwalk, I can talk about really simple stuff, but it becomes a lot more interesting and compelling when I can show them, hey, here's the city directory, this community directory that I created for Norwalk with the help of the city. And here it is. Here's this physical brochure. I can show where I've put this in the real world around me. And you can do this too. What I did wasn't special, but it wasn't happening. And so I did it. And now it's something that's out in the world, and you can do this too. And that achieves global reach actually a lot better. And we've seen this with co-working too.
That is absolutely true, because as I followed your move, and the Belongfulness thing came out, and we podcasted about it, and I've read it and I've referenced it. Like I remember the idea of it, but I couldn't tell you anything from it. But I remember Sesame Street, visiting the cafe, the rain, the meetup in the cafe and everything like that. And as we've been talking, I can just about picture it. And that is, I love it all the way along. I've always loved finding people doing those things rather than the, enterprise global level things. The local is really interesting. We need to go because my helicopter is, they charge the helicopter pad by the hour. Where can we find you online?
You can find my project belongfulness.com, BELONGFULNESS. And I'm Tony Be Good, TonyBgoode, Tony Be Good on all the socials. And the best place to find my stuff is on LinkedIn. So look me up on LinkedIn, Tony Bacigalupo, and give me a follow. And if you're working on something in your city, I want to hear about it.
We'll link to those stories in the show notes, folks. We'll also link to the world's finest 8,000 plus LinkedIn co-working group. And then, as I keep saying, we will be in London in February 2026 at the legendary Business Design Centre, and that will be for the Workspace Design Show, which is a great place for people to get together in London. And there was something else, isn't it? It's that International Co-working Day thing coming up, isn't it?
Oh yeah, co-working is turning 20. We're celebrating the 20th anniversary of the kickoff of the co-working movement as we know it today, August 9th, which is a Saturday. So in the vicinity of that day, we'll be ramping up some conversations. If you're running a co-working space, send me a picture. Send me a group photo of you and your co-working people hanging out together. Send that to tony@opencoworking.org, and I would love to add that to our compilation. And join the co-working visa.
All on coworking.com. Wow. And folks, stay tuned for how Bernie invented the word co-working. Have a great day. Be careful out there. It is a jungle.